Good afternoon, everybody. I'm KingBlackToof. Lovely to have you back. So I want to go over some of the changes that have happened for Homecoming in the last couple of days from Pavel Berger, the beautiful Pavel Berger. Gives us a lot of good information, even though he doesn't need to. He spends a lot of time on the forums answering questions, so big thanks to him. And also the person who's keeping up this Reddit with all these particular updates, because that's super useful. So thank you to both of them. I want to go over them and talk about them. There's some big ones that I want to talk about, really get elbow deep in. But there's very small ones that might interest you as well. So first of all, sound designers are working on both Cyberpunk and Gwent. Now, if someone said the level designers are working on Cyberpunk and Thronebreaker, you might be worried. But I don't think there's any cause for concern on this. The sound design in Gwent has always been great, and the sound design in Cyberpunk was also great. So no cause for concern for people on this one. And I'm sure they know what they're doing anyway. Also, we're going to get some new voiceovers for some cards. A lot of people are hoping for Harold the Cripple. He used to have a really good voiceover, and they redid it and it wasn't as good. Failing this, I can always, in theory, mod it back into Homecoming when it comes out. There's going to be some Easter eggs on the board. Now, this is unusual because the Easter eggs in premium cards just happen over time, but if that's the case, then everyone will see it. So it kind of indicates that you'll be able to interact with the board. I know they're going for sort of a battlefield theme and immersion, maybe in a pub scenario. But it does seem to indicate, and they're going for a 3D board, so it does seem to indicate you could be able to interact with the board, you know, click on things and stuff to while away the time while you're not playing, which is good. And Easter eggs abound. Hopefully they're hard to find, so they're more special when you do find them, hopefully. So we've been told that bronze cards get an average value of 5 now, down from 11. So they're reducing the average value of bronzes because the average value at the minute is about 11. You might be able to convince me it's 12. But you get a lot of cards like 7 strength, 4 removal, 4 strength, 7 removal, 6 strength, 5 removal, 6 strength, 3 drain, which happens to be 3 removal and 3 boost. You know, so there's a lot of cards which are basically 11 value, and that is the average bronze. Now, a lot of cards, the best cards that we play with are the ones that get away from that curve, which are 12, 13, 14. Like Viper Witches, I believe, are 16 because of the amount of alchemy staple. Tutors like Vicar of Iron Novice into Mahakam Ale is 14. Okay, but the average is, I think, 11, and they're all the ones we don't play with. But the bronze card value, they're taking it down to 5. And what's really weird about that, this is a big deal, I think, because the first thing that comes to mind is that they're limiting themselves for balance reasons. If you change 1 point from 5 to 4, then that's quite a big gap compared to a change of 1 point from 11 to 10. Okay, and if we just exaggerate it, 500 bronze and then take it down to 499 is a minuscule change. So the lower they've got to work with, they can't balance the strength in comparison to the abilities the card have. So you can't make them more balanced, you know, because you're limiting the design of how much strength you need. Now, I think the reason they're doing this, I think it was mentioned, is that they don't want the game to be too swingy. So lowering the point cost, it doesn't make massive swings of 30 strength. It makes swings of like, I don't know, 10. But it kind of still is the same, because if you're doing like swings of 30, well, that's like, say, 2 cards. Whereas if you're doing a swing of 10, but everything's lower, then that's still about 2 cards, you know. It is a big deal. Now, if you might not have been here, but a long time ago in an earlier version of Gwent, we actually had bronzes which were, you know, 6 or 7 value. And we actually inflated them up to where we have now of about 11 because of the same reason. Because it was difficult to balance the strength of a card based on their ability. And so you inflate the strength of everything, and it gives you more variance to balance the strength depending on what ability. They can be more creative with the ability because they've got more leeway to balance the strength. So this is a really weird one. And I think it might just be that they are going for less archetypes and more choice while you're playing. And also, you know, we're seeing a lot more activatable abilities, and hopefully I'm wrong and it's something like I'm in the wrong mindset, and the cards you have to think about cards differently, and 5 point value average is it's not worse for them, hopefully, in the long run. I think they would have learned this lesson by now, so I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt on this one myself. 38 cards, 4 leaders in each faction. Now, we are losing some leaders. Radovid, Dagon, some of them are coming in. Woodland Spirit, for example. I think we're going to get Demavend as a Northern Realms leader. It's not confirmed, but Royalty is coming, is confirmed. And they said Meave's not coming, so Demavend is probably the one. Another big deal is decks won't have more than 30 cards. So I think the minimum, they said, is 30, and now the maximum is 30 as well. So there you go. There's no fat decks. There's no thin decks. Now, there are decks that can thin to nothing. It's been confirmed. Pavel said, yes, there are decks that can thin to nothing. But this is quite a big deal because the current minimum for cards is 25 here. Sure, we can thin to nothing now. Some decks struggle if you build like a deck. You're trying to go for one strategy, you don't put many tutors. But 30 cards, right? So that's 5 more than we've got now. Combine that with the fact we're losing a lot of tutors, not all of them, but a lot. Means it's going to be harder to get through your deck and get the cards you want. Combine that with the fact that we're only getting 2 copies of every bronze. Means that all of these decks, while being thicker, are going to have a bit more shoopy, Siri-Nova-y aspect to them, where it's harder to get the ones you want because of the lack of tutors and stuff. Which doesn't sound that good. If we... Now, they said I mentioned this earlier, they said they wanted to disfocus archetypes, right? And make it more about putting choice upon you as you're playing. Make the cards a bit more malleable, so you've got a choice while you're playing. And to me, that sounds like Arena. And that's not good, because the Arena mode demonstrates how boring it can be when you haven't got an overall game plan. You do make some decisions based on what the opponent's played. If they play a Sabbath, oh, now I've got to play my removal. But they're only in the short term. They're not really in the long term. And I'm hoping they're wrong. I mean, chances are, because they're moving away from archetypes, they're trying to anyway, which is a concept that is foreign to me, because surely as players we're going to really try and bring it back because it makes us feel safe. But and they're trying to make cards be more passive, more broad, have different abilities so we can activate them when we want and stuff like that. So I think we might just be in the wrong mindset for what they're trying to achieve here. Because it seems like it's just bad, and bad. 3 bad things. Less tutors, less, fewer bronzes so that everything's a bit more muddled. Harder blacklisting and less ways to get the one you want. But also thicker decks as well. So So I got the feeling they've got to be doing something differently, and the way we think of cards is just not the way Gwent is right now. It's a massive change. It has a large implications because every deck turns out to be a little bit more like Arena, where you don't quite know what you're going to get and you haven't got an overall game plan. I'm not sure. That doesn't sound good to me. So I don't want to be pessimistic. I am quite optimistic. But this and the 5-point value have serious connotations attached to them. That's all I'm saying. I have respect and I have enthusiasm. Okay, shill. Number 1 shill. Right, some more game mechanics for you all. Nilfgaard will be a control faction, it was mentioned. Now, this triggers some people because obviously Nilfgaard has already got a little bit of control with the Viper Witches. And removal is the main thing that comes out. When you think about control, you think Viper Witches, you think removal. And that's quite annoying to play against. But there are other ways you can control things. You control the graveyard. I think that's been denied already. I don't think there's any ways to interact with graveyards now, apart from resurrecting your own stuff, as far as I'm aware. You can control the deck, shuffle cards the top or bottom. You can control via locking. They did say that locking is going to work differently. You can control position on the board, possibly. So we'll see. I don't want to really go too deep into that when I just be, theory crafting a lot of stuff. So we also saw the coin flip problem solved. Coin flip is solved. Okay, the solution is tied to leaders. Now, this is probably still just the initiative issue. They haven't mentioned anything else. So it's really just the initiative mechanic where every leader's got initiative tied to them. Okay, and we haven't learned anything else about it. I had a really cool idea where you could spend provisions to increase it or whatever, but people didn't really like that. I thought it was a great idea. But essentially speaking, we don't know the exact rules, but it's something along the lines of every leader's got an initiative, and if you've got a high initiative, you always go second over someone who's got a low initiative. Okay, so if you've got the lowest initiative out of the two of you, you always go first. And it's a way of, it doesn't fix the coin flip, it just dictates it, so you can build your deck around going first, or you can build your deck around going second. If you're equal in initiative, then the coin flip happens. But apparently it's solved. I'd love to see more. This is no doubt what we're going to see. This is everyone's number one fear, I think. So this is exactly what they're going to show, or should show, during the challenger video that we see. The drain mechanic is still present, but a little different, they mentioned. These are things that Unseen Elder and Ekimara use and stuff. We haven't heard anything else about that, so I can't really talk. There's no auto pass, so when you run out of cards, you pass. And the reason for that is we heard that you have to actually pass your end turn now. So the way it works is when it's your turn, you can do anything you want. You have to play one card. You have to do that. But you can also activate abilities, and you can activate abilities before or after you play cards. So it's just your time to do whatever you want. You have to play a card, but you can activate abilities, then play a card, then activate abilities, however you want, and then you press the end turn button and it goes to your opponent. And then a nice question was posed on, well, if I haven't got any cards left, does it pass and then I can't activate my abilities? And apparently the answer is no. You have to choose when to pass, even if after you've run out of cards, by the sounds of things. So you can keep activating abilities when it's not your turn. It sounds like it's ripe for abuse, but I'm not really worried about that. Not many people do that. But apparently it'll only auto pass when you both run out of cards, I would imagine, because otherwise you just never stop. I don't know. But yeah, so it comes from, because you have to end your turn and you've run out of cards, but the opponent hasn't, you still need to activate your abilities. So apparently there's no auto pass now. Weather is still an important role. Not much to say on that. A lot of archetypes are dead, in fact. Axeman is dead. Mill is dead. Nilfgaard spies are dead. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't see things like the Axeman. It's just that they're trying to get away from archetypes. Which is weird, because as players, we're trying to contain ourselves within an archetype. But they will still have cards which do drawing, but the archetype won't exist. We will still see spies for Nilfgaard, but they're trying not to make it an archetype, and your choices have to be a bit more malleable how you use them, rather than this is an idea I'm going and I'm just doing this, apparently. Old mechanics like Trio and Order will be back. So Order is when you play your leader ability, something happens. It used to be when you play your leader ability, I think Saskia come out on Order. I think also there might be a period where Roach had an Order as well. You play your leader ability and Roach came out. I can't remember. But that's what Order was. These might be different. We don't know. And Trio is an interesting one. I didn't actually think of this when I first read this, but Trio is when you have 3 of a kind on the board, they get special abilities. So it used to be Reaver Hunters. You get 3 of a kind on a row, they half the strongest unit on the opponent, which was really powerful. But the weird thing about this is you've only got 2 of each bronze in a deck. So having that third one is a little weird. Now, they also mentioned a while ago that Neca Warrior and Operator are changing. So it's clear they don't want things that copy bronzes that put them in the deck. So getting this third one is going to be quite weird. Maybe if you've put 2 on the board, the third one spawns, and that's an extra little added ability. So trios, I do like the idea of trios. They were normally quite risky and not worth doing, though, because it's set up for Igni and all that kind of business, but or really hard to do because people could see you were doing it. And just remove one of them and you're done. But, you know, I'll wait to see how it goes. We're not getting tri-pick artwork, so the trio is going to be a little lackluster in that respect. Because all the things that had trio were the things with tri-picked artworks. Reaver Hunters, the Wild Hunt Riders, you know, what are the other ones? Like Blue Stripes Commandos, I think, maybe. Not Commandos, the other ones. I think we already knew that the maximum hand size is 10, so you can't dry pass, or if you do dry pass, the opponent's not going to lose any card advantage because they can play 2 cards. So it kind of disincentivizes you dry passing round 1 in Arena because you don't gain anything from it. You don't gain the card advantage. And it prevents you from dry passing in round 2 because, again, you'll both draw cards, but if you've got a high amount of cards in your hand, then you'll just discard some, which means you lose the card advantage. Now, it doesn't stop you dry passing if you've went into round 1. So let's say you've only got 5 cards in hand and then you dry pass round 2. That would still work because you'll both draw 2 cards and both be on 7. So that's not, doesn't work in that scenario. It only works if you've got a 9 or 10 cards in your hand already. Okay, so it's to stop you dry passing round 1, which most people don't do. Some people do, like Axeman maybe, but maximum hand size is 10 now. Apparently, we should never really hit the row limits even with 2 rows. I spoke about this before. You know, tokens will stack, most likely. So you shouldn't really get too many. They did say that Northern Realms Swarm is not a thing. Might mean Swarm is other places, but apparently Northern Realms not so much. Some other card changes that we've heard is that there will be artifact cards. This was posed in a question asking about enchantment cards like Magic the Gathering, where you sort of equip an enchantment to a unit, or cards which you would place under a unit in a more card-looking way. And he said no to enchantments, but yes to artifacts. So this could just be things like equipment you can give to people to make them better, which it sounds like they're cards that give abilities, and that might be something that's actually quite interesting. Every time, like say if you've got a card which is every time this unit does damage, it drains instead, you know, and then you give it to a unit which has attack per turn or something, and then suddenly it's draining per turn, and you've got that whole interplay of this is an important unit I've got to get rid of, and it heals itself, and you know, artifact cards possibly. I'm just theory crafting completely on this point, but you know. Gabor is confirmed. If you don't know who he is, he was in the Mahakama Ale Festival, I believe, which was a holiday event, which we don't get at the minute. But it is one of the developers, Luigi Dalbravosky or something. Forgive me. So he's coming back, which is great. It's to be a Square Tau faction, most likely. Triss Telekinesis will stay the same, and Heim will change. Triss Telekinesis is one of the better cards. Better design cards. She's a nice card that can go in a lot of decks and helps your deck out a lot. It's a nice way of just empowering any form of deck you want. And this is exactly the style of card they're probably trying to go for. She's something which helps any deck you put her in if it's revolved around special cards. So great card that. I'm glad they're keeping her. We heard that Northern Realms cards are getting a new activate ability, with a charge counters. Now, I talked about this on stream, in fact. And charge counters, it's too broad to really bring up too many ideas of what it is and say, oh, that's not very good or that is good. I'm pretty sure there's only 4 things it can be, though. The 4th one being very broad. The first one is it's a counter on your card and it charges over time. So let's just say the old reinforced trebuchet, they would shoot every 2 turns rather than every 1. Okay, and that's basically what a charge counter could mean. It could mean it's got a counter, and when the counter reaches 1, it'll shoot. It will activate its ability, or it'll allow you to activate its ability because we trigger the abilities ourselves. But it has to charge every 2 turns. That doesn't sound very interesting to me. You know, it charges and then it reactivates its ability so you can use it again. Sure. The second choice is that it's got a number of charges on it. Okay, where you can use that ability several times and then no more. So it's got 3 charge counters on it, and it means you can use its ability 3 times. Or, third option, you've got a card with an ability, and then you've got another card dedicated to recharging its ability. So kind of like crew and crewman in some sort of way. That doesn't sound like a great idea either. So I've done an ability to do some damage, and now I can't use it again. But if I play this card, I can recharge its ability. Charge the counter. Doesn't sound that good. And the fourth one, which is quite broad, is just some wacky thing that just does something else. Like if you played a Mega Poggers version of Gwent, he had a charge thing where he would dash through the entire row and give everything +1, and he had things where it would charge through your hand. So the longer you didn't play it, the more bush you got. Something weird with the charging and counters. When you get hit, you counter with a charge or something. Unlikely. Let's not go too deep on that. They're my ideas for charge counters, but none of them sound too exciting. It sounds like if Northern Realm cards are focused on charge counterings and you just kill them, then whoop-de-doo. Not very good cards by the sound of things. Being awfully pessimistic about that particular one. He says it's a cool new ability. Let's trust Pavel, shall we, I think. Some gold cards will be silver and vice versa. Okay. Power levels of current cards are much lower. We heard earlier about 5 strength, average bronze, which means you probably have to bring the silvers and golds down most likely. Clan Brockvar and Tordorok will come back, which is nice. I'm not sure there's enough. Now, again, they're not going for archetypes. Like, we might go for a Demon archetype, but it really depends on how many cards are locked to tribal effects. Like, you've got the Clan Demon Pirate. It pulls the Clan Demon. So if you start spreading too far out, it's going to really limit that card. Don't think that card will still be there, but you know that's something they've got to consider. If they're bringing back Brockvar and they're bringing back Tordorok, is it going to be useful? Do we need to really know? Or are they going to, are they going to stick with loads of tribal stuff, which is specific, and then half of them are not going to be very useful? The reason they kind of took these out and merged things together is so that these tribal effects actually had some use and cards were actually useful again. Here we go. Leaders should be able to support an archetype and be versatile. This is kind of conflicting what they've said recently, where they're trying to remove archetypes a little bit. But I think what they're basically saying here, they've said it many times, is they want leaders to be broad. They should support an idea, but also be broad if you want to use them in a different way. There are less units that you simply draw you cards. That'd be like Avalak, Olbrich. They said the mill archetype is going, so less units which do that. Okay, and the last couple of things are Thronebreaker will be available in the Gwent client. This is one of the biggest things that we learned just recently. We got to see the Thronebreaker like preview screen, Thronebreaker, the Witcher Tales. Okay, and what we learned from this was that Thronebreaker is going to be its own standalone game now. Okay, it got too big, too complicated. It's now its own thing. It's still related to Gwent if you've connected. I believe you still get rewards from playing Thronebreaker into your Gwent account, but it's not necessary to install Gwent. Now, a lot of people have been saying this is good. A lot of people have been saying it's bad, that it's its own thing. As a Gwent player, I really don't care. The arguments are that having it as its own thing would bring a lot of people that just want to play this RPG, Witcher tale, and then it'll bring them over to Gwent because the mechanics and it'll be fun. So, but the other thing is that now it's taken out of Gwent, people won't have to install Gwent to play Thronebreaker, so they won't be tempted to move over to things. So it basically just boils down to, are they going to get more players from keeping it on its own, or get more players from keeping it in Gwent? And as a Gwent player, I don't care. I think you could give an argument for both, and I don't think it's going to make a bit of difference. It is as it is. It is separate now. You have to buy it with real money. It's about 30 hours long. I think it'll be great. That's all I really care about. So, other people said, obviously, if Gwent goes under, then they've still got the Thronebreaker Tales, which will still be a very good way to earn money for the company. It's very dismal, but like it looks great. They've updated. It looks very more, as we heard, more Witcher-like, more less cartoony. They've gone for more serious tone, which is what people wanted. And it looked great. I can't wait. That's good stuff. And that's the end of all the news over the past couple of days. Obviously, it's so hard to make sure you understand everything that's going to happen. But thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. I'll answer them the best I can. And take care of yourself. We'll be able to see Homecoming in the next couple of days. And fingers crossed. Right, guys? Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you again later, my friends.